The smell of cinnamon and fresh pine filled the Parker home, making it feel warm and festive. But my mother-in-law's cold voice ruined the holiday mood. "Those foster kids aren't real family, Emily," Sandra said with a frown. "I can't believe you're bringing them to our annual Christmas family photo." I stood in her spotless kitchen, gripping the pie dish I had spent all morning baking. Sandra calmly adjusted an ornament on her perfectly decorated Christmas tree, acting as if she hadn't just insulted the 3 children who had brought joy back into my life. At 34 years old, I never imagined I would have to defend myself as a mother, especially to the woman who had spent years reminding me that I could never have children of my own. "They have names, Sandra," I replied, trying to stay calm. "Lily is 7, Marcus is 10, and Jack is 13. They are part of this family, just like everyone else." Sandra turned toward me, folding her hands neatly in front of her expensive sweater. "Oh, Emily," she said with a fake smile. "I know your heart is in the right place. But foster children aren't the same as real grandchildren. I don't want to become attached to kids who could be gone in a few months." I almost laughed at the irony. If only she knew the truth. "They aren't leaving," I said as I placed the pie on her marble counter. "I'm adopting all 3 of them." The ornament slipped from her hand and crashed onto the hardwood floor. "Adopting them?" she shouted. "Without asking the family first? What about Robert's inheritance? What about the Parker family name?" Just then, my husband walked into the kitchen carrying several wrapped presents. I had asked him to leave the kids in the car while I spoke to Sandra, and judging by her reaction, it had been the right decision. "What's wrong with adoption, Mom?" Robert asked as he set the gifts down. "Emily has been caring for these kids for 8 months. They're wonderful." Sandra pressed her lips together. "Wonderful or not, they aren't Parkers," she said. "They don't share our blood or our family history. What will people at the country club say?" Robert gently took my hand. He knew how deeply those words hurt. They reminded us of everything we had gone through. We had dreamed of having children for years. We survived 3 heartbreaking miscarriages before finally accepting that we might never have biological children. Then life surprised us. We met Lily, Marcus, and Jack. They became our family, not because of blood, but because of love. "Actually," I said, taking out my phone, "they have a much stronger connection to this family than you realize." I opened an old newspaper article I had discovered while researching the children's past. It contained information that would completely change Sandra's life. Before I could show it to her, she waved her hand. "I don't need to hear another sad story," she snapped. "It changes nothing. The family portrait is for real Parkers. I'm not turning it into a charity event." Robert stepped forward. "Mom, enough. The kids are coming to the photo session. That's not up for discussion." "Then I'll call Patricia and schedule another day," Sandra replied angrily. I refused to ruin my Christmas cards. "Ruin them with what?" I asked, finally losing my patience. 3 amazing children who have survived more pain than you could ever imagine? Kids who have brought more love into this family in 8 months than your country club friends ever have. The room fell silent. Christmas music drifted softly from the living room. Sandra stared at me in shock. In 12 years of marriage, I had never spoken back to her. Robert let out a slow breath. "I think we should go home," he said quietly. "We'll deal with the portrait later." Outside, the cold winter air hit my face, but it couldn't cool the anger inside me. The kids were waiting in the car, laughing together as they argued over which movie to watch that evening. Their happiness filled the car with the warmth Sandra refused to accept. As I looked back at the house, I saw Sandra standing at the window, watching us leave. My thoughts drifted to the envelope hidden safely in my home office. Inside were DNA test results. They proved that Lily, Marcus, and Jack were not strangers. They were the grandchildren of Sandra's long-lost sister. The sister she never talked about, the family's secret she had buried for decades. Tomorrow's Christmas portrait would change everything. Robert reached over and squeezed my hand as he drove. "You okay?" he asked gently. I looked at the children smiling in the back seat. "I will be," I answered with a quiet smile. Because family isn't built by blood. It's built by love. In the end, family turned out to be built on both love and blood. And Sandra Parker was about to discover that in a way she never expected. The next morning was cold and bright. Every breath turned into a little cloud, and the clear blue sky made it the perfect day for Christmas family photos. As I gently braided Lily's dark curls, I couldn't stop thinking about the old picture I had found of Sandra's sister. Lily had the same deep brown eyes and the same gentle smile. "Do you think Grandma Sandra will like my dress?" Lily asked, spinning around in her blue velvet dress. It matched the boys' sweaters perfectly. The hope in her voice broke my heart. "She's going to love it, sweetheart," I said with a smile, even though I wasn't sure. The DNA result sitting inside my purse proved Sandra was their grandmother by blood. But accepting them as family was a different matter. Jack leaned against the bedroom door with his arms folded, clearly uncomfortable in his dress clothes. "She won't like it," he muttered. "She hates us." Robert walked over and placed a comforting hand on Jack's shoulder. "She doesn't hate you," he said gently. "She's stubborn and slow to change. But she'll get there." He looked at me, and I knew we were thinking the same thing. Today would change everything. When we arrived at the photography studio, Sandra was already there. She was busy giving instructions to Patricia, the photographer, making sure everything was exactly the way she wanted. The moment she saw us, her smile faded as her eyes moved from our matching outfits to the children. "So, you brought everyone," she said coldly. "Of course we did, Mom," Robert answered. "We're all family." Before anyone could say another word, Marcus quietly stepped forward. "Mrs. Parker, I want to show you something." He carefully pulled an old photograph from his pocket. It was a faded picture of his birth mother, Sarah, taken only months before the accident that left the 3 children without parents. Sandra's face suddenly lost all color. Her hands shook as she reached for the picture. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "It belonged to my mom," Marcus replied. "She told me it was taken at Pine Grove." The moment Sandra heard those words, she froze. Pine Grove. The family's old summer home. The place where she and her sister Catherine had spent every summer together before their relationship fell apart. Sandra slowly turned toward me. "Emily," she said quietly. "What is this?" I noticed the photographer's assistant pretending not to listen. "Maybe we should talk outside," I suggested. Sandra tightened her grip on the photograph. "No," she said firmly. "Tell me now." I opened my purse and took out the DNA test results. "These children are Catherine's grandchildren," I said softly. "Their mother, Sarah, was your niece." I discovered the connection while researching their family history during the adoption process. Silence filled the room. Even the children stood completely still. Sandra looked from one child to another, really seeing them for the first time. "Catherine," she whispered. For the first time since I had known her, I saw tears fill her eyes. "I haven't spoken to her since she married someone you didn't approve of," I finished gently. I looked at the 3 children standing beside us. "These are her grandchildren, Sandra. They're your family. The same family you said didn't belong in your Christmas portrait." Sandra slowly sat down, still staring at Sarah's photograph. "Sarah," she whispered. "I didn't even know she had children. After Catherine left, we lost all contact." Her eyes finally met Lily's. "She has Catherine's eyes." "She does," I replied with a smile. "And Marcus has your mother's smile." I glanced at Jack. "And Jack has the Parker family's height." As it turns out, Catherine married a distant cousin from Robert's father's side of the family. Sandra looked at the children again, but this time there was no anger in her eyes. Only shock, regret, and the painful realization that the family she had pushed away had been standing in front of her all along. Robert stepped forward and looked his mother in the eyes. "Mom," he said calmly, "these kids are not just temporary. They're our family, in every way. We chose them with our hearts, and now we know they're family by blood too." For the first time that day, Sandra moved without hesitation. She slowly walked over to Lily. Lily looked unsure for a moment, but she didn't step away. Sandra's voice trembled. "I've been so wrong," she whispered. "I cared so much about appearances that I couldn't see the wonderful family standing right in front of me." Without thinking twice, Lily reached for Sandra's hand. "It's okay, Grandma Sandra," she said with a bright smile. Do you want to see my dress? Mommy helped me pick it for today. That small act of kindness melted the wall around Sandra's heart. She knelt down and wrapped all three children in a tight hug as tears streamed down her face. Across the room, Patricia quietly lifted her camera and captured the beautiful moment. The family photo session turned out nothing like Sandra had planned. There were no stiff poses or forced smiles. Instead, Patricia photographed real moments. Sandra gently fixing Lily's hair, Marcus showing her old family pictures while they laughed together, Jack finally relaxing enough to smile naturally. Looking at them, I realized family isn't just about the past. It's about forgiveness. It's about choosing each other. And it's about opening your heart, even after years of keeping it closed. The healing wouldn't happen overnight. But as Sandra adjusted the children's collars and brushed hair from their faces like any loving grandmother would, I knew we had taken the first step. Over the next few months, Sandra changed in ways I never thought possible. The woman who once cared only about reputation now spent weekends planting flowers with Lily, teaching Marcus her secret family recipes, and cheering louder than anyone at every one of Jack's soccer games. One Sunday afternoon, while the kids looked through old family albums in our living room, Sandra called me over. "Emily, I found something." She held an old yellow envelope. Inside was a letter from her sister Catherine, written only a few months before the accident that took Sarah's life. "I never opened it," Sandra admitted quietly. "I was too proud, too stubborn." She looked at the children. "Now I'll never get the chance to make things right with Catherine." I sat beside her and gently touched her arm. "You're making things right with her grandchildren," I said. "That matters." Sandra nodded and carefully unfolded the letter. As she read it, tears rolled down her cheeks. "She wanted us to make peace," she whispered. "She wrote about Sarah, about the children. She wanted our family together again. And now we are," Robert said as he walked in carrying mugs of hot chocolate, a tradition Sandra had recently started. Just not in the way anyone expected. Sandra's relationship with me changed too. The hurtful comments about my inability to have biological children disappeared forever. Instead, she thanked me for bringing her family back together. One evening, while we prepared dinner, she quietly pulled me aside. "I've been thinking," she said. "I'd like to start a trust fund for the children's education." She smiled nervously. "Not because I care about status anymore. I just think it's what Catherine would have wanted for her grandchildren." I hugged her tightly. "She would have loved that," I said. "And she would have loved seeing the person you've become." The adoption became official on a beautiful spring morning. Sandra sat proudly in the front row of the courtroom, smiling through happy tears as the judge declared Lily, Marcus, and Jack legally our children. They had belonged in our hearts from the very beginning. Now it was official. During the celebration lunch afterward, Sandra stood and raised her glass. "I used to believe family was about carrying the Parker name," she said. "I thought it was about bloodlines and tradition." She looked around the table. Robert, me, the children, even Patricia, who had become one of our closest friends. "But now I understand what family really is." She smiled through tears. "It's love. It's forgiveness. And it's being willing to give each other a second chance." Lily climbed into her lap. "Tell us another story about Grandma Catherine." Sandra smiled. "I'd love to." For the next hour, she shared memories she had kept hidden for decades. The children laughed, asked questions, and slowly learned about the grandmother they had never known. That summer, Sandra surprised everyone with another idea. "I want to reopen Pine Grove," she announced. "It's time this house is filled with happy memories again." Watching the children run through the gardens where Catherine had once played filled all of us with joy. Sandra taught them old family traditions. She laughed more than I had ever seen. The pain of the past didn't disappear. But together, we built something better. One evening, as we watched the sunset from the porch, Sandra quietly spoke. "You know, Emily, I spent so many years worrying about what a family should look like that I almost missed the family I already had." She looked at me with grateful eyes. "Thank you for not giving up on me." I smiled and squeezed her hand. "And thank you for choosing to change." Just then, loud laughter came from the yard. Robert and the kids were chasing each other through the sprinkler. Mud covered Sandra's perfectly trimmed lawn. Her flower beds were a complete mess. Months earlier, she would have been horrified. Now she simply laughed. "Catherine would have loved this," she said softly. "She always told me life wasn't meant to be perfect. It was meant to be enjoyed." Before either of us could react, Lily grabbed our hands and pulled us into the water fight. Within seconds, all of us were soaked, muddy, and laughing together. In that moment, I looked around at our imperfect family, and I realized we finally understood what family really meant. It wasn't about blood alone. It wasn't about status, family names, or perfect Christmas portraits. It was about love. It was about acceptance. It was about forgiveness. And it was about having the courage to open your heart when life gives you an unexpected gift. Our family hadn't come together in the traditional way, but it was real as the laughter echoing across the summer evening, as real as the love that had finally brought us all home.